being here on tonight. Thank God for everything He's done for us, and thank God for everything He is continuing to do. I won't be too long on tonight. I am at this point a month post. I've had surgery last month, but I'm standing here before you all to preach the word, and I thank God for that. And it has not. Today has been a day. It has been busy. I got off work and went home, and I wasn't feeling the best, but it's something about when you come into the building, you begin to feel a little bit better. And just with the surgery I had, I'm still not able to eat much, and so, but God still gives me strength. Amen. To do His word and to preach His word, and so I thank God for that. I thank God for my wife for introducing me on tonight. I thank God for her being here. As she said, it's been difficult to be here, and not to mention she's a nurse, so it's definitely a bit difficult when you got to deal with a lot of the stuff at work. And so, but God knows and He sees all. And we thank God for Pastor Moody on tonight. Y'all give him a hand. And thank God for Sister Moody on tonight, who's done a wonderful job as MC. We thank God for every minister, pastor, evangelist. Let's see what all the titles we have, superintendent, and bishop here on tonight. We thank God for the supervisor on tonight. We thank God for each and every one of you. It's not by our grace that we're here, but it's by the grace of God. And because He is who He is, He's allowed for us to be here. You do know you didn't have to be here, right? There was somebody who desired to be here on tonight, but then they woke up on the cold table. There was somebody who desired to be here, but they're sleeping in their grave. Somebody planned at the beginning of the month to be here, but they're not here on tonight. They just don't feel well in their body. But God allowed you, even in the midst of the mess that you're going through, to be here on tonight. Not for your own sake, but He allowed you to be here just to give Him the praise. And wouldn't it be God if we weren't able to give Him some praise sometime? God just allowed you to feel Him every now and again, even in the midst of what you're going through. He allowed you to feel Him every now and then. And so we thank God for His grace. We thank God for His mercy. Listen, on tonight, we're going to go ahead and preach. Turn to Judges, the 7th chapter, beginning at verse number 2. Judges, 7th chapter, beginning at verse number 2. It will speak to what I have heard here on tonight. It speaks to a lot of what I have heard a lot of people talk about on tonight. Judges, the 7th chapter, beginning at verse number 2. Judges. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, and then Judges. 7th chapter, and then verse number 2. If you have it, say amen. Amen. And it say, and the Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands. Lest Israel claim glory for itself against me, saying, my own hand has saved me. I'm going to skip down to verse number 7. It says, then the Lord said to Gideon, by the 300 men who laughed, I will save you, and deliver the Midianites into your hand. Let all the other people go, every man to his place. So the people took provisions and their trumpets in their hand, and he sent away all the rest of Israel, every man to his tent, and retained those 300 men. Now the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. It happened on the same night that the Lord said to him, arise, go against the camp, for I have delivered it into your hand. Someone said, deliver it into your hand. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, what do you do? What do you do when you're outnumbered? When you're outnumbered. All right. What do you do when you're outnumbered? When you're outnumbered. What do you do when you're outnumbered? I would tell you on tonight, it feels like sometimes in our life We go through enough hell in our life that we can take on the whole burdens of the world. Seem like sometimes in our life it's like things keep coming up in our way. Things you're doing good one day, but then for some reason things begin to come up out of nowhere. You're doing well, but then for some reason you get sick in your body. You're doing well one day, but then your spouse starts acting up. You do well, and then for some reason the motor decides to go out on your car. You're doing well in your life, but then you get ready to turn on your car, and then the air conditioner won't even work when it's hot. It just seems like sometimes you're just being outnumbered. If you begin to look here at this particular chapter, if to get context about what's happening, you got to go back to chapter 6. If you look in chapter 6, we begin to see a man by the name of Gideon. All right. Gideon here, it says that his father and the other people worship Baal. And so if you begin to look at Gideon, it says Gideon is here in a wine press, threshing wheat. If you know about threshing wheat, it's not ideal to do it inside of a wine press. It said not only was he in the wine press, but he was underneath an oak tree. All right. At this time, because Israel had done so much wrong, it said God had allowed for them to be given over into the hand of the Midianites. Yeah. Not only were they given over into the hands of the Midianites, but they were given over to the hands of the Amalekites, and it said in the people of the far east. And as they are doing this, it said that they begin to go and destroy the land. They begin to destroy the wheat of the land. They begin to take the cattle and the oxen. They begin to kill everything in the land. Have you ever in your life begin to face some Putins in your life? Have you ever in your life begin to encounter some things in your life and you don't even know why you're being attacked by the enemy? You know that you're a child of God, but for some reason you're being attacked by the enemy. But don't you know, as soon as you get on the Lord's side, that's when the devil begins to get up on your trail. When you get on the Lord's side, that's when the devil begins to throw some things up in your way. When you begin to get on the Lord's side, that's when the demons begin to get after you. For some reason, you had the attention of everybody in church when you were in the world. But when you got up in the church and began to do what God told you to do, but then they begin to talk about you, then they begin to persecute you, then they begin to lie on you. That's when they got up on your trail. When you begin to get on the Lord's side. And so sometimes in life, it just seems that you're outnumbered. It said that the angel of the Lord he saw Gideon here in the wine press underneath the oak tree, and he said, Gideon, the Lord wants to use you to deliver his people. And said the people had begun to pray. They had begun to pray for Lord, somebody please deliver me. Lord, let somebody deliver me. Have you ever been to a place where the Lord had to get you down to your lowest point before you realized that you needed to call upon him in the beginning? Have you ever been to a place where you should have been dead and gone and you began to call upon the Lord and he answered your prayer? Have you ever been to a place where you lost somebody and the Lord had to humble you and had to take some stuff away, and then you realized that it was due to him that you should have depended on in the first place? And they said, Lord, we know we done wrong. We know we done everything wrong. So now we realize the things that we have done have not been right to you. So Lord, send somebody to deliver me. When God could be so mean to us, when God could tell us that he would just turn his back and forget about us, God is so grateful to us that he still remembers just a sinner like you. When you were in the midst of your mess, God remembered you. When you were in the midst of your test, God remembered you. When you were in the midst of your trials and tribulations, God remembered you. God cared enough about you that he remembered you in the midst of your trouble. So here these people are being oppressed by the Midianites, and as they're being oppressed, God remembers them. And God said, I'm going to send my servant to deliver you. And so Gideon had to go through some tests, and Gideon had to test the Lord a little bit and say, Lord, just show me this sign. And the Lord said, okay, I'll allow for the dew to be on this cotton, so I'm going to allow for this to happen. He said, so now I see that you've done all of this. And so now we get here to this point. It said that, and he said, go ahead and tear down that altar. Go ahead and tear down and build up what I need you to build up. And the people got on his trail, don't you know? And so as he said, I'm going to go ahead and call some people. And I'm going to go ahead and get ready to go to battle. And as they get here to this battle, here we are in chapter 7. As they get here and they see the Midianites are down in the valley. The Lord began on the day before the battle. The Lord said, there are too many people to fight. There are too many people in this army. Because if you begin to fight, then you'll get the glory. So this first morning, you may be outnumbered. So here it is that the Midianites and the Amalekites had an army of 135,000 people. It said that they had so many people. It said they had so many camels that it just was like the sand that was on the land. You can't even number. You can't even count. They had so many people. Have you ever been in a situation where it seemed like you've been outnumbered? It seemed like it been more people against you than more people that were on your side. It seemed like there were more people that were against you than people that were rooting for you. It seemed like there was more stuff stacked up against you that you can handle. But God is saying, even in the midst of this, even with you being outnumbered, I'm still on your side. And so as they're here, 32,000 people answered the call for Gideon. The 32,000 people showed up to fight. As they're here, God gets them down to the valley. They can see the enemy in the valley. Sometimes you can see your enemy and they'll intimidate you. Sometimes you'll see your enemy and they'll scare you sometimes. Sometimes you'll see your problem and then they'll make you want to run and flee. But if you begin to believe God is on your side and he's greater than any problem that you can stack up against. God is greater than everything else that's showing up his head in your life. God is greater than the demons that the devil has. And because God is on your side, you have to know, even being outnumbered, God has a trick up his sleeve. And then when he has a trick up his sleeve, that means he's going to come through for you. And so as they're there, the enemy is there in the valley. The numbers are stacked up against them. Sometimes problems are just stacked up against you. Sometimes financial issues are stacked up against you. Health issues are stacked up against you. Family issues are stacked up against you. When you're doing well, somebody dies out of nowhere. Sometimes things are just stacked up against you. And you don't know why it is or why things are going on the way. But God sometimes has a way to get your attention.
Come on, break out.
So that you would know who's in charge. God has a way of getting your attention. So that you'll be able to know that you can call upon him and he'll see you through. God has a way of getting your attention. And when you come out, you know it wasn't you who delivered you. But it had to be somebody that was greater than you.
Come on now.
Isaiah 54:17 say, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. And then he went a little bit further and said, every tongue that rises up against you in judgment shall be condemned. So that tells me that if people are against you, when things are said against you, when matters are done against you, if you got God on your side, no weapon is going to come up against you. If you got God on your side, the demon has to flee. If you got God up on your side, every attack of the enemy has to be cast down. If God is on your side. So then you know you may be outnumbered, but then second, God has to get the glory. So as they're waiting for the battle, the Bible said as they're preparing for the battle, if it wasn't thought that they were going to be able to go in, God said there's too many people getting in to fight in my army. Because if you begin to fight and you win this fight, then you'll get the glory. He said, then you'll say my own hand has saved me. He said, so I want you to do this for me, Gideon. He said, tell everybody that's scared just to go back home. He said, tell everybody that's scared to go back home. God needs some people in this season that's not going to be afraid of the fight. But God needs some people that's going to stand up and be ready to fight on his battle. God needs some people who are going to be able to fight when the enemy comes against you. God needs some people to say, I don't care what you're going to do, but I know somebody that's bigger than you. God needs some people that tell the devil when they come up against you that go ahead, demon, you might well flee because my God has the victory. Paul declares that we're more than conquerors through Jesus Christ. So that tells me that before the battle it begins, God has already handled it. God don't need no scary people. He needs some people that's going to fight in this season. True that. Don't you know when you were in the world, they had a person called a ride or die? This is the person you know you can call when nobody else will show up. This is the person that you could call no matter how big the person was. But they were called and they'd be ready to fight. God needs some folks in this season that's not going to show up and be timid and quiet, but he needs some folks that are going to show up and fight. God don't need somebody who's going to sit there with
not looking for nobody that's going to hide their hand. But God wants some folks that's going to stand up and fight.
Come on, preacher. Come on, preacher.
So he said, everybody that's scared, he said, go ahead and go home. So he gets them down to 10,000 people. So God said, sometimes God has to change some plans in our life because he don't want us to get the glory. Have you ever been in a situation where you know it wasn't you who brought you out? You know you had to be backed up into a corner and you knew it was going to take a miracle to bring you out. You know it when your mama wasn't going to be able to do it, your daddy wasn't going to be able to do it, there was nothing that the church could do, the preacher couldn't pray for you, nobody could do it for you, but when you went down upon your own knees and you called upon your own prayer, God said, I can come through for you. You got to have a Hezekiah spirit on tonight that say, I know I've been in the midst of this trouble, I know I've been in the midst of something that God can, other people can't bring me out of, so I'm just going to turn my face to the wall. And I'm going to pray that God can bring me out of this.
Hey!
Have you ever turned your face to the wall?
Come on now.
Have you ever turned your face to some stuff? And God began to work, but in the minute you crying, God was working. In the midst of you crying at night, God was working. In the midst of you praying, God was working. God said, I need some folks that are going to fight in this season.
Hey! Hey!
So as they're doing this, God changed the plans on them. He said, because I don't need you to take credit, but I want to have the glory. So he said, all you got to do is submit to my plan on today. That's all I need you to do. And all he was saying is this. Look, you might be scared. You might be self-centered, but it ain't about you. It's about God. God don't want you to get the glory, but he wants you to watch him work. Once you hand it over, the song said, he'll work it out. All you got to do is turn him over. He said, I stop worrying about it now. Turn it over to the Lord. He worked it out. Psalms 27 says, some trust in chariots, some trust in horses. But we remember the name of the Lord. So I know the Lord as a strong tower. I know him as a refuge. I know him as a peace in the time of storm. I know him as everything to me. I don't know what you know him as, but I know him as everything to me. And that's why I got to tell him thank you sometimes for what he done for me. I don't trust in man. I don't trust in Joe Biden. I don't trust in the vaccine, but I trust in God. And because I'm trusting in God, I know even in the midst of this trouble, God has to bring me out. And so then, once God gets the glory, God will use a few. So as he gets it to 10,000, the Bible says 22,000. If you do math correctly, 22,000 people return home. That's more than half of the people. Some people, get this, some people in this next season is not meant to go into battle with you. God has to cut some folks off sometimes. Everybody that you've been crying over, God was just cutting them off for a reason. The folks that you were crying over at night, the folks that you were worried about, that boyfriend that you were worried about, that girlfriend that you were worried about, the wife and spouse that you were worried about, God said I had to cut them off because they couldn't go into your next season. God said they were going to hold you back from some stuff that I was trying to do. So I had to cut them off so that I could be able to work in your life. So maybe they were being too negative. Maybe they couldn't do it. Maybe they had some doubt about some stuff. But God said I had to cut some folks off sometimes so I could begin to work in this season. Aren't you glad that God began to cut off some excess weight so he can work some stuff out for you? You may not have never got to your breakthrough if God didn't cut some folks off. You were crying about it, but God said, yeah, it may hurt right now, but I was just cutting them off so I could work in this season. So he had to cut some folks off. So he could work in the next season of their life. So as he began to cut them down to 10,000. Watch this. God said it's still too many people. Can you imagine being Gideon? And Gideon said, Lord, I got 10,000 folks. They got 135,000. Why you cutting all these people out? God said, just trust me, Gideon, on tonight. God is just asking you to trust him. You don't understand what he's doing, but he wants you to trust him. You don't understand why you lost some things, but God said, trust him. You didn't understand why you had to go through surgery, but God said, trust me. You didn't understand why you had to get cancer, but God said, trust me. You So he said, go ahead and go down to the stream, go down to the brook, and this is what I want you to do. He said, I want you to do something for me, get him. He said, those who lap like dogs, you keep those people. The ones who get down on their knees and drink. He said, I want you to cut them. Why were you doing this? Well, if they lap like dogs, that means that they were not on guard if they were attacked. Watch this. If they were not on guard, that means they weren't ready for the attack of the enemy. Why would God use some folks who weren't on guard for when they were going to be attacked? Because he wanted them to depend on him. Sometimes the enemy throws some stuff up in your way. You don't even understand why you're being attacked sometimes. God said you're being attacked because I'm just working out a purpose for your life. Paul declares that we know that all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and to those who are called according to his purpose. If you're called according to his purpose, then you have to know that God knows what he's doing. And if he said that all things was working for the good of those who love him, then God was working it out for you in the midst of your situation. God said, look here, those who lap like dogs, they're not going to be on guard. But then also this is why. Dogs were the most despised people during this time.
Yeah, it was.
If they lap like dogs, then they didn't even have enough sense to know that they were in danger.
All right.
But aren't you glad that God used you when you even have enough sense to know that you were in danger? Aren't you glad that God covered you when you didn't have enough sense to even care for yourself? Aren't you glad that God was looking out for you when you were in a nightclub and you were ignorant even though somebody was shooting? Aren't you glad that God was looking out for you when you could have been the one that was dead and gone? Aren't you glad when you were on the street corner and you were drinking and turning a bottle to your mouth and you were just worrying about the party? But God said, I got a purpose over your life. But God was looking out for you when you didn't care about yourself. You were being reckless, you were being dumb, and you didn't know what else to do. But God said, even when you didn't have any sense, I was caring for you. When you didn't even have enough sense to care for yourself, God was looking out for you. So God said, I'm using the people who don't even have enough sense to know they were in danger. Because I'm covering them for a purpose. And so then his fourth point is God will save you. Watch this. God begins to tell Gideon, he said, okay, there's 300 men here. He said, okay, everyone who got down on their knees, you go ahead and send them home. Send them back to their tents. He said, but by these 300 men, you'll be saved. Why would God get it down to 300 men? Well, what are you doing, God? You said, Lord, why you get me down to my lowest point just to teach me a lesson? God said, I need some folks that's going to be solely dependent on me. God does not want you to be dependent on the car you got. God don't want you to be dependent on your pastor. God don't want you to be dependent on the superintendent and the bishop. But God wants you to learn how to depend on him every now and then. Superintendent can't be there sometime for you in the midnight hour. Bishop can't be reached sometime when you're crying. But when God, you call upon him, you can always get an answer to him. God needs some folks in this season who are going to be solely dependent upon him. Look, your wife may be laying in bed with you, but she may not be able to wake you up at night. But she can always turn it over to Jesus. And he'll work it out. It said we serve a God that never sleeps and never slumbers. And because he never sleeps, when your spouse is sleeping, you can always reach God. When your child is sleeping, you can always reach. When you can't call mom and daddy, you can always reach God. And so he said, by these 300 men, you'll be saved. And so he said, sometimes God has to let everyone else go. So that you can be not dependent on yourself, so that you won't be dependent on man, but you can be dependent on God in this next season of your life. Watch this. Gideon was still afraid. I would have been afraid too if it was 300 people going up to fight against 134,000. I don't care how big of a Christian you are, you would have been scared yourself.
All right, preacher.
I don't care how saved you are. If God told you to go fight against 20 people, you'd probably be scared. You say, Lord, don't let me leave without my gun. Don't let me go over there without these people. Let me go grab something first. But God said, listen, I want you to go ahead and down. He said, I'm going to go ahead and assure you some victory. He said, if you're scared, Gideon, he said, you can go by yourself or you can take Uriah. He said, this is what I want you to do. He said, I want you to go over to the camp of the Midianites. And there you're going to hear a dream being interpreted. Aren't you glad when God sent you some messages sometimes when you were too scared to go hear for yourself? Aren't you glad that God sent somebody your way to deliver a message to you, to let you know that you can have faith and believe in him? Aren't you glad that God sent some folks your way sometimes to let you know that God was going to let you come out? And so as Gideon said, I'm going to go ahead and take Uriah. I'm going to go ahead and listen to this dream. And he said, so as they get here, they heard one of the people talking. And he said, Lord, I seen some barley rolling through, and it dunked down the tent. He said, that means that Gideon, and by the sword of Gideon, we're going to be defeated. They said, Gideon get excited. Gideon got happy. Have you ever got excited when God gave you some assurance or something? You don't even know why you were happy, but God said, you're going to make it out of this. And you just got happy. God said, you're going to make it through. And you got happy. The preacher preached you happy. And God said, you're going to make it through. And you just got happy. You came into the building feeling one way, but then the preacher preached the sermon. You just got happy. Because God said you were going to make it out of it. You don't know what was going on with you, but God said you're going to make it through it. And you got happy. And so it said that as they had a favorable outcome, it said that this is basically what the dream was saying. Barley was just a meal that was reserved for people who were poor, for people who were humble, for the people who were worthless. These are the ones that this meal was reserved for. I was saying that these 300 men, the one who was despised, the one who was rejected, are going to be the ones who God used to defeat the army.
All right now.
Not only that, but this barley was also, the reason why it was so poor, that it was mainly reserved for dogs. The ones who were despised, the ones who were rejected. Aren't you glad that God used you when you were despised, when you were rejected, when you were nothing, and people told you weren't going to amount to anything? Aren't you glad that God used you when people told you weren't going to be anything? When people said, boy, you're going to be just like your daddy, you're going to be just like your mama. Aren't you glad that God still used you when you were nothing in your life? The Bible declared we were nothing but filthy rags in his eyesight, but he still saw fit to use you. And so God was using them to defeat this army. And so this is what Gideon did. Gideon got so happy. Gideon said, just get your horn, just get your pitcher and a torch. He said, this is what we're going to do. So God doesn't require much sometimes to defeat the enemy. All he requires is for you to trust him on tonight. God don't need you to go grab 20 people from across the street. But sometimes you just need to be you and God to defeat the enemy. God don't require much. Sometimes it just takes you falling down to your knees to defeat the enemy. God doesn't require much, but sometimes it just takes you come down here to church. When you didn't feel like, when you just was down and out, God said, just come to the building and you can defeat the enemy. So sometimes you just got to assemble yourself to defeat the enemy. And so then, this is what they did. Gideon and the army waited till 10 o'clock to the change of the post. They said they were going to surprise them on tonight. So this fifth point is help is on the way.
All right now.
Watch this. God had a plan to defeat the enemy. Gideon said, Lord, I'm going to follow you now. I'm going to go ahead and follow what you told me to do. So Gideon said, I'm going to blow my horn. He said, we're going to split you into 3 companies.
Right.
He said, we're going to blow our horns first. And then once you hear me blow your horn, you blow your horn, then you scream the sword of the Lord and they'll give you. So here it is what it is. Look, this ram's horn just signifies a call in battle. All this horn did was signify God's presence.
Right.
Sometimes the enemy will get scared sometimes. When he know that God is in the midst. The enemy has to flee when God comes into the room. Your problems have to cease when God walks into the situation. Things have to stop when God comes into the equation. But all this shout was just a sound of war. And it was just a warning sound and a call sound that God was on the way. Shout in Hebrew means ruah. Ruah means to give a shout or to blast. It's just a warning that God is on the way. God wants you to shout sometime. When you can't do nothing else, God just wants you to shout sometime. When you can't even say a word, just shout sometime. And the enemy will get you to scream. The devil understands to shout because God comes into the room. God begins to defeat some things. God begins to show some things up. And that lets the devil know that God is on the way. All you got to do is shout sometimes. When you don't even feel good in your body, just shout. When your feet are hurt, just shout. When your hands are hurt, just shout. When your heart is hurt, just shout. When you're brokenhearted, just shout. When you don't even have nowhere else to do, just shout. When you don't know what else to say, just shout. Look at your neighbor and say, shout. Shout. The devil knows what a shout means because that means God is on the way. That's why David declares in Psalm 34, I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praises shall continually be in my mouth. I begin to like the part where he said, oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. So that would tell me that even in the midst of my problem, even when I don't feel well, I ought to keep his praise in my mouth. I ought to keep the Lord's name on my tongue. And when I do that, I can just shout, and the devil know what it means. I don't know about you on tonight, but do you feel like shouting sometimes? When you don't know what else to do, you ought to shout in this room. The Bible declares that as they put the torch in the picture, as Gideon blows his horn, and they blew their horns, it says that the people shouted the sword of the Lord and the sword of Gideon. It said as they did this, the Midianites got scared, the Amalekites got scared, they began to flee, they began to cry. The God is like that sometimes. When you've been in the midst of your problem, as long as you shout, the Lord will allow your enemies to flee sometimes. The Bible declares that at the name of Jesus, that every knee shall bow, every tongue has to confess. That means that everything has to scatter, everything has to flee when you shout at the name of Jesus. I begin to shout at his name. I begin to shout his name, and my struggle has to cease. My health issues have to cease. My financial issues have to cease at the name of Jesus. Have you ever tried calling up on Jesus? Did he see about you? Have you ever called upon Jesus? Did he answer your prayer? Have you ever called upon Jesus? Was he a refuge for you? Have you ever called upon Jesus? The Bible declares as a very present help in a time of trouble. As he shouted the name, it said they began to flee. They began to cry out. They began to run. And not only did they do that, but they said the enemy began to turn on each other. They began to kill each other. The thing that was designed to kill you. Watch this on tonight. I don't know who I'm talking to. The thing that was designed to kill you. The thing that was designed to destroy you. God was turning around so that they began to kill each other. I don't know about you on tonight, but the thing that was designed to kill you, God is turning it around. God is turning it in your favor. God is turning it on his head. I don't know about you on tonight, but is there anybody in this building that's determined to shout in this building? I don't know about you on tonight, but is there anybody in this house tonight that's made up in your mind that I'm going to bless the Lord at all times? Is there anybody here on tonight that made it up in your mind that God is going to see me through? Look at your neighbor, say, neighbor, when you have nothing in your life, all you have to do is shout. When you have nothing in your life, call upon Jesus. Somebody shout Jesus in this building. I don't know about you all tonight, but I'm glad when I've been outnumbered, God came through for me. I'm glad when I've been outnumbered, God saw me through. I'm glad when I've been outnumbered, God answered my prayer. I'm glad when I've been outnumbered, God was coming through for me. Is there anybody here on tonight that made it up in your mind that you're going to praise the Lord? Is there anybody here tonight that made it up in your mind that you're going to bless the Lord? I'm glad on tonight that God was seeing me through. I'm glad on tonight that God was answering my prayer. I'm glad on tonight that God was just bringing me out. I don't know about you on tonight, but I'm glad for Jesus. I don't know about you on tonight, but when I was in a car accident, God saw me through. When I was in at 65 miles per hour. God saw me through. I don't know about you all tonight, but God was seeing me through in the midst of my problem. God said we may be made through for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Look at somebody and say, joy comes in the morning. Go ahead and shout right now, because God is giving you joy. Go ahead and shout right now, because God is going to bring you out. Go ahead and shout right now, because God is going to see you through. Is there anybody here on tonight that believes that God is seeing you through? Is there anybody here on tonight that's been going through things in your body and it seems like it wasn't going to get well, but God was seeing you through tonight? What do you do? We outnumber. Well, I can tell you what to do. Just call upon the Lord. He'll see you through. Is there anybody here on tonight that feels like shouting in the midst of your situation? Is there anybody here on tonight that feels like dancing in the middle of your situation? Is there anybody here on tonight that feels like praising the Lord? Let's you praise the Lord right now. Why am I praising God? Because one Friday evening, he went up to an old cross called Calvary. He was nailed in his hand. He was nailed in his feet. Oh, he hung his head. He just lost his shoulder. The Bible declares that he died. They took him down to an old borrowed tomb where he laid down that first day. Oh, you get happy on tonight. He laid down the second day. The Bible declares that early. Somebody say early. Somebody say early. Early. On that Thursday morning, he got up with all power in his hand. What do you do? Somebody say, what do you do? What do you do? We outnumbered. The odds seem stacked against you. Seem like you ain't going to make it out. God said, go ahead and praise me on tonight. Wait until the morning.
Yes.
It's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Wait until the morning.
Yeah.
You'll be beginning to see some things change in your life. Wait until the morning. God begin to defeat your enemies. Wait until the morning. The tears that you were crying are going to be dried up. If you just wait until the morning. I don't know who I'm preaching to on tonight, but you ought to believe on tonight that when you outnumbered, God can do it for you. The devil tries to rear his head sometimes. Make you think that God has forgotten about you. He'll make you think that God won't even care about you. But God cares about you. He sees you and he cares. God said, Gideon, it don't take a lot for me. It don't take many people. But I just want to get the glory on tonight. The things that you were going through was so that God could get the glory. I lived the best way that I can. And things still happen to me, even as a preacher. As I said, once September 30th, 2018, I was going to wash some clothes at my parents' house. We got into an accident. We got hit by a stolen car. 48 spasms in my back. Could not lift up my arm.
My God.
Couldn't hardly turn my head.
My God.
My pelvis was shifted. But I serve a God. One that comes see about you. Listen, I had just preached 2 services that day. But the devil sometimes will get on your trail. One sermon I had preached on that day was shout it out. All you got to do is shout it out. That sermon was about the wall of Jericho. Just shout it out sometimes. When you don't know what else to do. Sometimes you're just crying and you don't know why you're crying. Your spouse trying to figure out why you're crying. You call your mom and daddy, they don't know why you're crying. God said just shout it out. Sometimes he got to get you down to your lowest. So you can learn how to depend on him. If you ever been to your lowest, you know how to appreciate when you got something. God is the something that you have. And when he gets you down sometimes, it's not to harm you. As he told Jeremiah to tell the children of Israel, he said, listen, I know the plans I have for you. Thoughts are good and not of evil. To give you an expected end. He said, I'm not doing this to harm you. I'm not doing this so you can be miserable. I'm just doing it to make you better. That's why James declared, and he told us that we ought to count our joy when we go through divers, trials, and temptation, knowing that it's trying our faith. But he said something that was key in that. He said faith has to have its complete work, so that you may be complete and lacking nothing. God was just working your faith. God was trying to complete you on tonight. When you didn't understand what he was doing, I'm about to go home. When you didn't understand what he was doing, God knew what he was doing. So what do you do when you're outnumbered? What do you do? Go ahead, trust in God. Trust in the Lord. With all thine heart and lean not your own understanding. All you got to do, acknowledge him. The Bible declares he shall direct your path. So you go ahead and you trust in him. It may be hard, it may be difficult, but you trust in him. I guarantee you, as a witness, God will see you through. We're standing across this building.